I got involved in the mental health world in 1994 because of my son Garrett. When he was 4, he had been given medication that caused some permanent damage in his brain, and it caused him to have what we call a fight or flight response whenever he experienced anything negative. And that could be just a tone of voice or somebody crying or whatever the case may be. It also happened when he was overexcited and too happy as well. So we had to kind of keep things pretty even keel for him. It really did put us into a world that we knew literally nothing about. We weren't prepared for finding services or knowing what to do to get the help that he needed.
As a kid, one of the worst fears I've ever had, it wasn't a boogeyman underneath the bed or closet. The real one that really kept me up at night was being institutionalized. Because without support, especially back then when you were just a kid, not really understanding what's happening to you, what your mind is going through, what your emotions are. It was a great fear, and it was a genuine fear. It was that thing that always in the back of my mind. If you don't do this, if you don't do this task right, correctly, people think less of you, therefore they don't think you're worthy of being a member of society, and you get a room in a rubber room. Comfortable? Probably. Unpleasant? Definitely. Demoralizing? Absolutely.
When we finally found some help, he was about the age of 5, and North Dakota Partnerships program came into effect and kind of wrapped services around him and gave our family the services and support that we needed. At the time, I was a stay-at-home mom and had 3 little ones, and so we really had our hands full trying to do things. There was no way that I could have done all that care for him by myself.
In a perfect world, someone who is in need of behavioral health services would be given a variety, would be given a choice, and would be able to access services in their own community. In reality, what is available in our community, which is Western North Dakota, if I were in need of in-treatment mental health services, I would have to drive to Minot. My name is Janelle Olson, and I'm a disabilities advocate with the North Dakota Protection and Advocacy Project. I think of services that were available 32 years ago when I started my job. There were psychiatrists who were in Williston. There was inpatient treatment. That is not available. We have a concern for services for juveniles.
Kids that I work with today and that had worked with are not getting the kind of care that Garrett would. And so we're seeing kids go into the system deeper. We're seeing them go into the justice system. A lot of kids going into child welfare to access services. A lot of times it is about access and trying to find funding.
There used to be a recovery center where people could go to get support of one another, other folks in the community. That is not available now. You know, if I were to break my leg today, I would go to the hospital and I would get treated. That is not the case with somebody who maybe need immediate mental health services. They could go to the hospital, but the services could not be provided here, and that's not right. That's not fair. When people's mental health is good, then you have a community that also is good and healthy.
You know, there was a point in time when Garrett had become very, very depressed, and I think it was probably about 9 years old. And you know, I remember Garrett when we were at the University of Minnesota And just before we went in for our appointments, he had this nightmare. And he had this nightmare about being put in this place where he wasn't going to be able to see his family. And he was crying, and we're kind of calming him down and everything, and telling him it's going to be okay. And that day we knew that they were going to talk about placing him.
My mother, I always gave her a hard time when I was growing up. She was always supportive, trying to understand my my disability. And she had to advocate for me, and she became, unfortunately, their messenger. It says, people tell you can't do this, you can't do that. Unfortunately, she bared the brunt of it.
You know, if he was sad, depressed, or upset, those aggressions were very, very serious. And we know if we couldn't stabilize that or get it to calm down at all, that he wouldn't be able to be there. And it was very, you know, I'm not gonna joke, it was very, very serious and dangerous for our family when those things were going on. Other people were being hurt. Our biggest concern was probably the harm to family members. When Partnerships was there, we had crisis response. We had safe beds. We had a lot of different things to kind of prevent hospitalization. And right now, what's happening is when kids have their meltdowns, the response that parents are given, rather than that help and those crisis response, is call law enforcement.
Police have responded to families in crisis with a child of whatever age that is in crisis, that is acting out, that is maybe violent due to mental health issues. And the lack of being able to get services, mental health services for that youth, prompts over and over repetitive calls to the police department to come and handle the crisis. And we can do that. We can respond. That's costly as well for law enforcement to respond to those calls, and then that takes time away from other calls that are now waiting in the community as well. And we'll respond, but our job there is to ensure everybody's safety. Yeah, there may be a crime that is being committed at the time, whether it's disorderly conduct, and to arrest someone, to take them to jail, and just to house them there instead of getting them the mental health treatment, maybe getting their medications back in balance, getting them back on their medications, is the real answer.
The more you call law enforcement, the more charges a child will end up racking up, so to speak, and then they end up in the justice system because that's the only response you're having to the crisis that they're dealing with.
If someone violates the law and breaks the law, certainly they need to be charged and held accountable accordingly. But if it's mental health driven, then that needs to be identified as the root and at least get that taken care of.
I suffer from chronic depression, generalized anxiety disorder, bipolar disorder. It gives me a lot of mood swings. ADHD, like it's really hard to motivate myself to do things, even the basic things around the house. And it's like your own Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. One day you wake up and you're on top of the world, and then the next day you just feel like there's just pure lava inside of you, or total distraught. It's worse than 1,000 funerals at times. And other days I'm unseasonably happy. Other times I'm just distracted, jumping from one thing, work on something for 2 minutes and the other thing for 5 and another thing for 7, and you just keep rotating, and by the time you end up being done with any of them, and by done I mean exhaustion, everything's just a big mess again. Other days you just lay in bed all day, you know, because you just can't think hard enough or well enough to get out of bed. And you don't know why you feel that way. With these kinds of disorders, it's hard to give one medication for the one disorder because it might counteract with the other disorder. Without my medication, it's just like my moods just take the best of me. Sometimes I'll even have like personality shifts. You know, the person that you see right now isn't really the person that I am. And sometimes it's really hard for me to find an identity without my medication. I had a therapist, and I don't know where she is now, but I haven't seen her in a long time. At one point, I was a functioning member of society, and I did do things. I had a car, you know, I had my own house, and people seem to forget that you once were that person. Or maybe they don't forget, they just wish that you could get back to that. And I wish that more for myself than anything.
I was employed with Mental Health America of North Dakota for 3.5 years until the grant ran out. I would go to the Dakota Recovery Center. I would arrange people to come in to visit with the clients or run meetings with the clients. I would run the members meeting. I would answer the phone. I would do peer support once in a while. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed helping others, because when you're helping others, you're helping yourself. It's really helped me out a lot. I used to just isolate in my home because I was ashamed of my illness. I couldn't even go a week without being in the hospital about 5 years ago. I have 13 different personalities. Kathy, Carl, Hans, Samantha, Heather, Tabby, Tara. I can tell you when they're around, you know, and some of them I'm afraid of myself because they do like harming the body. I sometimes wake up with burns on my arms, and I know I don't remember doing it. It can be very hard to understand. Not many people know about my illness, dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality disorder. We need more recovery centers, people like Mental Health America, because they do understand, and they're not there to judge me. They're there to help me, and they're there to support me. 3.5, 4 years ago, if you knew me then and now, you'd see the difference in me. I think it was the job, and I think it was the support and the understanding. Without the funding, we're gonna suffer, and there's gonna be nobody there for us, nowhere to turn. I don't wanna wind back up in the hospital. I've gone through electric shock therapy. They were trying to get me to forget some bad things that happened. Instead of forgetting the bad stuff, I forgot the good stuff. Things like my son's childhood. I've gone 5 years without being hospitalized now, and I'm proud of that. I'm starting to isolate again. I just watch TV, I color, I play on my tablet, I clean, you know, and that's all I do, and that's not good for me. My sister, she says the same thing. She doesn't want me to start isolating again because she knows the progress I've made with Mental Health America and Dakota Recovery Center. She doesn't want to see me go backwards either. I would love to have a part-time job again. I don't want to lose Mental Health America. They gave me the courage to keep going until the grant ran out. Sooner or later, is there going to be nobody there? You know, and if nobody's going to be there, then I might as well hide back in my shell. and I don't want that.
After all of this had happened, he ended up with a diagnosis of autism. And that was, we were told at the age of 5 that that was really for treatment purposes, to really figure out what kinds of support he needed. Garrett has done remarkably well, and again, we are so thankful that the state of North Dakota invested in his future. In his high school years, we really felt it was important that he maintain employment, and that was something that we had to make sure that he had that idea of what it is to work, and that it was important. That's how you get money, that's how you live.
I'm an assembler, attachment assembler at Bobcat, doing the same thing over and over again. I suppose it is my autism that does that. It likes the consistency in it. It's calming. You don't get stressed out by doing things that are completely out of your comfort zone, and I do enjoy it.
And he has his own apartment, which was really important to him too. It was not his dream to live with his mom and dad for the rest of his life, and so he really did want to be out on his own, like his siblings were. And so he has his own apartment, and he's paying his own rent. He's not on food assistance, he's not on housing assistance, he's paying for his own stuff. And that was something that I told you early on was never something that they thought that he would be able to do.
It's a nice neighborhood, and I can't complain about it. I've been living here for nearly 6 years now. Keep this place, spick and span, so to speak. During the weekends, doing the laundry, clean the counters, dusting, vacuuming. Do those little things first, then do whatever you want to do afterwards. Without the support systems, I suppose I keep myself in check when it comes to keeping things spick and span here, but without them, it would have been difficult for me to come and go from work. It would be difficult for me to do any other errands that I need to do, like, go to a bank or, go grocery shopping, things that need to be done. So support systems is very supportive, very helpful, and I'm glad to have them.
Finding services for Garrett was really tough too. We were just building the mental health system at that time, and so things weren't ready done for him. And so it was really like trying to figure out how to put this patchwork quilt together, basically, and finding all those different pieces to make everything work was a lot of difficulty. I mean, it was really a whole family, and it wasn't just Garrett's issue, it really impacted the entire family. People need a roadmap and a navigation system to really figure out how to get through and get the services that they need when they need them, where they're available, and how to do that. The difficulty that you also see are people that are homeless, that they are not able to maintain their apartments and those kinds of things because they're not getting the services that they need as well. People going in and out of institutional placements as a result of not having what's needed in the community for them. It's really important that we take a look at the full gamut of not just saying it's mental health. We need to look at housing, we need to look at employment opportunities for folks, being able to access those community-based treatments. We need to look at possibly bringing back peer support. That's been it's an evidence-based practice that really works for folks, that has helped people. This is the only chronic health condition that we wait for stage 4 of the disorder before we do anything about it. We need to be getting to folks sooner. We know, along with other health conditions, that the sooner you get to it, the lessens the severity of what we're dealing with and what people have to go through. We know that this would work. And so we just need to do better. We need to do things before we hit stage 4. And we need to have a full continuum in order to do that.